Well, college football is finally back. Week 1 of the season is here, and we are so excited to introduce a new host of this show as Mike Johnson joins us on Alabama's head-to-head. The Tide counting down to a brand new era as Cattlemen will take over in Tuscaloosa. Bama welcomes in Western Kentucky on Saturday. Mike Johnson, Simone Eli. Let's go head-to-head. Happy game week, everybody. We're just a couple days away now from kickoff in Tuscaloosa as Alabama welcomes in Western Kentucky for week 1. And we welcome in the one and only Mike Johnson here to head-to-head. We appreciate you joining us this season, Mike, as we break down the Tide each and every week. Of course, you are former Alabama standout playing up front for the Tide. When you look at this season, Mike, how excited are you to be talking Bama football as we go into 2024?
Well, I think I'm just like every other Alabama fan right now that it's going to be a lot different. The look is going to be a lot different. I mean, just listening to Coach DeBoer's pressers and kind of getting his attitude and getting his persona, just getting used to that. I mean, I don't even know if Coach DeBoer is going to be a yeller on the sideline. That'll be a little bit different vibe, for everybody watching the games. But I'm excited. Look, I think Coach Saban, very thankful for everything he did for me and for the program, but Coach DeBoer seems like he's well suited to take over this program and kind of, usher in the next era of Crimson Tide football. And so I think that brings an exciting new chapter. And nobody was ever going to take over for Coach Saban and hit the ground running. But I think if there ever was somebody, Coach DeBoer is the man for the job.
Yeah, no doubt. It was not going to be an easy job, regardless of who it was going to be. We've always said that. And then it finally happened, which kind of took everybody by surprise a little bit back there in January. I had actually just gotten to Disney World, and it was so funny because there was a running joke in the office every stop that I've been when I've been throughout the state of Alabama, and it was, I'm going on vacation. I'm not coming back unless Nick Saban retires. Okay, so I land in Disney World, and Nick Saban retires. And I'm like, I am not going back. I am not doing this. Like, this man just decided to just pull this out of nowhere, and it really surprised everybody. And now we enter this new era, Mike. And like you mentioned, I really do think that Kalen DeBoer, though completely different, has absolutely made sure to kind of honor and appreciate what Nick Saban has accomplished, has built, the dynasty that Alabama has been, while also making this his own as he enters this fall.
Yeah, and I think there's an excitement to that, right? I mean, you look at what Coach Saban kind of had and the process he went through and the chapters he had with assistant coaches and obviously Kirby Smart and Jeremy Pruitt, but then kind of cycling through guys and coordinators and all these different guys. There just seems to be a renewed energy around not only Coach DeBoer, but also the staff under him and the consistency those guys might bring. So what can, a new offensive coordinator do with a guy like Jalen Milroe? I think it's exciting. I'm hoping and praying and kind of holding my breath that we see the same brand of football, but I think it's exciting nonetheless to just see something new and see kind of a new chapter.
Seems as though with fall camp in the books, now entering game week, that they're in a rhythm. And if there isn't, they surely haven't shown that in any sort of press conferences or any dealings, that everything has really been business as usual, so to speak, coming out of Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. And it's weird because I think over the years, and you're just like me, you kind of learn to kind of speak Sabanese. You kind of read between the lines of what Saban might be saying and what he's alluding to and how good he feels about the team. It's like the worse he talked about him, the better he might have felt about, the product on the field.
Yes.
I don't know how to read Coach DeBoer yet. And not only that, but, I mean, getting a chance to listen to the assistant coaches in the build up to the season and getting a chance to hear them, it's such a newfound kind of energy around those guys. So I'm excited. Coach DeBoer, I think just listening to him as well as the assistant coaches, like I said, and kind of reading between the lines, that will continue to grow. But he really seems to be happy about the product so far. And he really seems to be happy about the leadership. And he talked about the consistency and the energy. And it was something that was so big for us when we were playing under Coach Saban, the consistency throughout training camp that I think you have to have if you're going to make a run through all, 16, 17 possible games now? I don't even know the count, but
a lot.
It's a long season, right? It was a maximum of 14 when I was playing. Now there's a couple more added to that. So if you're going to make it all the way through that, you have to have consistent energy. Sounds like Coach DeBoer and company are pretty excited about that so far.
Yeah, and one thing about Coach DeBoer that I feel like we've been able to see in the glimpse of practice that we're able to see in the interviews, the SEC media days, and he came down here to the Mobile area where I work full time for some public appearances, and he's just always the same guy. And I think that that's a positive thing. I think that what Nick Saban was obviously legendary. I mean, he stands on his own and who he was and brought to the table. Like you said, we had to diagnose kind of what he was saying. Sometimes we weren't totally sure, but he had the highs and lows, which was his model. And it seems like this is going to be a different model. But one thing about Kalen DeBoer is that he is willing to change with the times, whereas Nick Saban was not willing to change with times, and he did not hide from that. He said, "This is what I don't like anymore. I don't want to talk about money. I don't want to have guys that don't want to be committed to this and just love my program and love what we have and work for playing time. I don't want to deal with it. So I'm not. I'm going to the beach." And he did. And now you have guys in there who it's the new era of football who want to change with his times and be the type of recruiters and the type of people you have to be in outside of the building. I think that there's benefit in that. And I think we're seeing these veteran players at Alabama really take to that at this point.
Yeah, and honestly, I think as a fan base, and obviously, like I said, as a former player, nobody wants to see Coach Saban leave. No fan was like, "Oh, I hope he goes." But I think that there is something to that in this era, and I think that let's just look specifically on defense. His pattern matching scheme was so difficult at times to kind of learn, and you really had to be entrenched in that system. You really had to be cerebral. In this era of transfer portal, I think it kind of fits a little bit better to kind of simplify things and make that a little bit easier and be more of a disruptive defensive front and play a little bit more man coverage on the back end. I think that's what you'll see. So, look, I think Coach Saban's defenses were legendary, but you go back to what it was really after the Kirby Smart and Jeremy Pruitt eras wasn't quite as good. And I think a lot of those reasons were because it was difficult to teach. Same thing with, what you wanted to do offensively. It's just a new era of college football. Things are being done differently. Recruits are being brought in differently.
Let's look at this team, look at this roster, and look at the key guys back. Jalen Milroe, who has played in the highest of high games and has done unbelievably positive things on the field while also learning some lessons like he had to early on last season, and then going and leading Alabama into the playoffs and the things that they were able to accomplish there. When you have a guy back like that and you bring in some of these new roles, the guy, the receiver room is going to look different, figuring things out front. What do you feel like, how much will this team benefit, I guess, so to speak, from a Jalen Milroe to be the voice in the locker room and the veteran key pieces back on that side of the ball?
Yeah, it's been really an incredible offseason for Jalen Milroe, right? You see him with like Aaron Judge, and you see him at like Barstool headquarters.
Yeah, I know.
All these crazy things. And it's like, man, if you thought there was going to be some kind of quarterback battle, you seem to be sadly mistaken with what Jalen Milroe is doing this offseason. No, I think it's exciting. I had a chance to visit with Coach DeBoer doing radio over here in Atlanta. And, after the Michael Penix selection, which seemed to shock the world, we had Coach DeBoer on the show over here. And we kind of asked him about, working with Michael Penix at Indiana was a little bit different. You had a running Michael Penix and a guy that, would make plays with his legs, and opposed to a Washington Michael Penix that throwing the ball all the time and kind of sitting back there in the pocket behind the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line. And Coach DeBoer was very specific. He said, look, at Indiana, we had to have him run, right? We didn't have the athletes we had at Washington. And I think in there is some science for Alabama fans when you look at what Jalen Milroe might be. Is he going to be a runner? Is he going to be a thrower? Well, the good news is that Coach DeBoer seems to be able to suit offenses to fit either one. And so I think it's exciting to be able to really put somebody up to the skill set that Jalen Milroe brings to the table. I don't think that Tommy Rees maybe got as much as he could have in that department and really was able to utilize all that skill set. So now Jalen Milroe, 1 year older, with a little bit different set of eyes kind of watching things. And I think it's exciting to kind of see the way he'll be able to flourish and the way the playmakers around him will be as well.
Such great insight, Mike. No doubt about that. And when you think about the new pieces, so to speak, where do you maybe think that the biggest question mark is for you as Alabama enters this year on the offensive side? It's a big question. It's a loaded question because of the new regime and all of that. But I guess when you look at maybe a position, so to speak, in what room maybe do you just want to go out there and see what's this going to look like for the first few weeks?
Yeah. I mean, I think that position could probably be wide receiver. And I know that, a number of pieces kind of leaving the room. The same thing with running back. I mean, Jason McClellan's no longer there, and you have to look for some different guys. I'm a massive believer in Justice Haynes, so I'm not even going to look in the backfield with that one. But I think when you look out wide, just simply the fact of how fast can some of these guys grow up and become pieces. Jeremy Bernard, I think, is one of those guys that kind of plugs in right away. I think he's athletic enough to really be a difference maker. Kobe Prentice kind of the same way. Where is his landing spot? And then obviously the 5-star receiver, Ryan Williams. I think when you look at him, how quickly can he get up to speed? But you're like me and Alabama fans are kind of nodding their head right now, everything about these guys has been absolutely positive throughout training camp. So, it's different than the NFL. You don't get the preseason games to kind of get that look in. But nonetheless, the whispers you hear out of camp, it seems like the wide receivers are coming along. I don't think anybody right now has questions about this offensive line. I know you had some last year. I really think this is a group that will flourish this year in terms of the leadership in that group. They're obviously a massive group of people. I mean, I joke with people all the time that had I been recruited to Alabama right now, I would have been a scrub that was like 4 string on the depth chart. There's no way I would have cracked this depth chart with some of the size of some of the athletes, like they have there now. So I think those guys will all fit in. I think running a little bit different scheme, maybe not leaning on them as much, just straight up pass block 50 times a game will be a little bit different. But using those strengths, I really think that Justice Haynes, though, offensively brings such a different explosive dynamic that you maybe haven't had in a couple of years in that running back position. I'm really excited about that. So I'm going to lean into the wide receiver position a little bit just because I think they're unproven. But I think at this point, you got to feel pretty good about that group.
Yeah, just to piggyback off, I mean, I had the opportunity and honestly the pleasure to cover Ryan Williams for his 3 years at Saraland. And of course, he opted to go to college early. And you don't do that if you don't have a maturity about you. And when Kalen DeBoer came down here and we asked him about Ryan specifically, we know what type of talent he is on the field. And what does it look like at the next level? You never really know, except for when you have a guy who looks like he's a generational talent and also is the type of person that goes in and can just command a room, like just by being people's friend. Like he's not trying to go in there and say, hey, I'm a 2-time Mr. Football winner. He just is a likable guy who just wants to be a part of something special. And Kalen DeBoer, alluded to that. And so I think nothing but positive. I agree with you. And you want to see it all play out. You want to see what it looks like when you get out there on the field and actually kick off the game. But again, I think all good things to be discussing as opposed to maybe like, hey, what are we going to do with this spot? It's just a matter of like, who's going to get the reps? What's it going to look like? How are you going to, split up, the balls? And I think there's all positive things on that side of the ball for Alabama in a lot of good ways. And we'll see what the new blood looks like when it comes to scheme and the coaching staff as well.
I will jump in and tell you, I mean, it was one of those things when Julio Jones was being recruited to Alabama and everybody was talking about how crazy Julio Jones was. And this guy's, the next great player. And me being a guy there, I'm like, he's a high school kid, 5-star. How good can this kid be? And Julio Jones shows up on campus, and I couldn't quit looking. I was like, man, this kid is unbelievable. He looks like an absolute robot. I mean, it was stunning to me. Absolutely, to see a kid walk out of high school the way he did.
Oh, yeah.
And it sounds to me like the words out of Tuscaloosa are a lot the same they were back then. And just this kid is a generational talent. As a guy they're going to be able to lean on as soon as he steps on campus.
Yeah, I cannot wait. I truly cannot wait to see it. When you look at week 1, it's going to be a night game at Bryant-Denny Stadium, Alabama taking on Western Kentucky. This is a Western Kentucky team that, oh my God, what year was this? This was 2 years ago. I mean, all the seasons run together. 2 years ago, I watched just dial it up against South Alabama. And Kane Womack was defensive coordinator. I mean, he will tell you. I mean, Coach Helton, they put it on them in New Orleans, no question. It's not the same Western Kentucky team that it was 2 years ago. And with the transfer portal, you don't really know what it looks like because you're trying to fit in these new guys every single day. What type of challenge do you feel like they can present Alabama?
Well, I think first and foremost, if you're Western Kentucky coming into this game and you look at the secondary and you look at who was exiting the secondary, who's coming back, you look at the communication back there, and you obviously have a veteran presence in TJ Finley at quarterback. I think you want to stress that secondary and try to test that communication very early. It's a new coaching staff. It's a new defense coordinator, like you said, and a lot of new players back on the back end. Let's spread you out. Now, they don't have Malachi Corley, who's a guy that a lot of people wanted the Atlanta Falcons to draft, the wide receiver from Western Kentucky last year.
Yeah.
He's not there anymore. And I think when you look at the guys out wide, they still have a lot of playmakers. I don't know if they'll be as explosive as they were a year ago when they were picked to finish first in the conference.
What would be your message to fans, being someone who played for Coach Saban and knows what the era really, really felt like from inside the locker room? What would be your message to fans as everyone just adjusts to things looking different and feeling different? And what, just who knows what the change, what are they running out to? I don't even know if everything. Like, how do you want everyone to be able to take it seamlessly. Some folks don't like the change. Listen, we live in the South. We all like to, we like things to be as they always have been, right? But it's going to be different in some ways. And I think there's got to be maybe some patience with that win, loss, or draw.
Yeah, I think my message would just be that, even if this team doesn't have the same personality of Saban coach teams, does not mean they won't be fun to watch and does not mean they won't be successful. I think you look at the toughness and really the grit that this defense played with, specifically, prior to, 3 or 4 years ago, back 2018 and prior to that. When you look at the lack of yards that were ever put up against this defense, and you go back to some of the players, the middle linebackers, the Reuben Fosters that you always had in the middle, even if things don't look like that, even if it doesn't quite have the edge and the tenacity that you might have seen, does not mean this team won't be successful. I really do look at Kane Womack's defense, and I look at a group that probably will allow more explosive plays, but also think they'll create more negative plays as well.
Yeah.
Coach Saban really did a great job of putting up a little picket fence up front and not allowing you to run the ball. This team will be more violent into the backfield, which will lead to more explosives. It won't look the same, I guess is what I'm saying, is give the identity of this team kind of a chance to take shape. Give Kalen DeBoer's personality as a head coach of Alabama time to take shape. Don't react after one possession and say, well, that doesn't look the same, or he didn't hit as hard.
Yeah.
There's more than one way to do this. We've seen, Kirby do it differently than Nick did, who does it differently than Dabo, who did it differently than Ed Orgeron, and whoever else comes before them winning national championships. Kalen DeBoer deserves the time to create his own personality. I'm excited to kind of watch it come to fruition. Hopefully Alabama fans will give a little bit of cushion while that's going on.
Be patient, have some cushion. And be excited, too, for the new era that will kick off at 6 p.m. It'll be a night game there at Bryant-Denny Stadium under the lights. It's always a fun light show there in Tuscaloosa for sure. This has been super fun. Mike, I am pumped to introduce you to the show. Great analysis, great insight. Before I let you go, one thing we do here on Head to Head is we give our predictions. Obviously, Western Kentucky coming to town. Where do you feel like this will look on the scoreboard when it hits 000 there at Bryant-Denny on Saturday night?
I mean, does anybody really know, right? I mean, it seems like, all these teams change so much from year to year. Listen, I think I'm going to go somewhere in the ballpark of Bama scoring 48 points. I think that Kalen DeBoer will want to send that message specifically on offense of what they're trying to get done. And I think these players are hungry, right? They hear the whispers. They hear the, the post-Saban attitude. This is the group of guys that stayed around after Coach Saban that chose to be a part of this program. I think they're very hungry. I think they'll put their foot down. I think they're a lot more explosive out of the backfield right now at running back than they have been in previous years. I think that right around 48 or 52, somewhere like that for Alabama scores offensively. I do think Western Kentucky probably finds a way in the end zone, but give me somewhere in the ballpark of like a 48-13 type of game.
Yep.
I know that's got Bama written all over it, but look, I'm a Bammer, so it is what it is.
You know what? And that's why we have you on the show. We don't have Cole Kublik on this show for a reason. He's on the Auburn show saying the same thing about Auburn. So You're doing exactly what you need to do here on episode 1 on Head to Head, Mike, and we appreciate you for that. I'm similar. I like 42-10. I do think that with the Kane Womack violent attacking, get in the backfield type of defense, you're probably going to get burnt. There could be a big play. They get downfield, they kick a field goal. It happens. It's not the end of the world, and there's going to be a lot more of excitement in what that defense produces in terms of turnovers and getting the ball out than what I just alluded to. But that also happens as you learn and you make sure that everyone's communicating properly. But nonetheless, it's going to be a fun one. Mike, we appreciate your time, man, here on Head to Head, and cannot wait to see what this team looks like on Saturday. And then, of course, going into week 2 as Alabama prepares for a new era of football for sure. So, Mike Johnson, I'm Simone Eli. This has been Head to Head, and we will see you next week.
Brought to you by Alabama Beef Farmers and Ranchers.